Good to have you on International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network. International Tit-Bits is a show where we bring you news, events, and stories from across the world. Here we ensure that the real on-time news are packaged for the viewing pleasure of the people. And today I have my co-host in the house. Thank you so much, Anita Barry, for joining me.
Thank you, too.
Let's go straight to our headlines for today. Coming from Niger, Junta's Prime Minister anticipates deal with West African bloc. And from Gabon, Central African bloc lifts its membership over coup. And from Sweden's former oil firm chief on trials over war crimes in Sudan.
And on Sweden, government demands immediate release of detained citizens in Iran. From China, workers damage Great Wall looks for alternative. Still from China, Typhoon Haikui sweeps China's Fujian province.
There's some many more stories we'll be looking at after the short break. Stay with us.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what's the blood.
I have fought a very family.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
people into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
human trafficker.
Honorable they are not picking our calls. They made up their minds. I am in the way.
With the EU, but
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics,
Nobody's ambition is what's the blood.
I have fought a very family.
natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
welcome back. This is International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network. And now to our stories. Niger's post-co-Prime Minister Ali Mohamed Lamine Zeni says he is hoping for an agreement with West African neighbors. Niger's new Prime Minister says they are hoping of reaching an agreement with the West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS following the co-hardline position on the coup in the country. Ali Mohamed Lamine Zani, who was appointed by the junta, was making his first appearance at the press conference in Niamey. We have not stopped contact with ECOWAS. We are continuing contact. We have good hope of reaching an agreement in the coming days, he told journalists on Monday. The regional bloc has threatened to use force to restore civilians' rule after the 26 July coup by soldiers of the Presidential Guard who hosted elected President Mohamed Bazoum. Their commander, Gen Abdulrahman Taihani, declared himself the new ruler and subsequently detained Mr. Bazoum and his family. Mr. Lahami Zani on Monday maintained that they will defend themselves if attacked, saying, "Every preparation has been taken." He also said negotiations were underway for the withdrawals of French troops from the country. French has about 1,500 troops in Niger, some of them deployed at an air base near the capital.
The Central African Regional Bloc, known as ECOWAS, says it has suspended Gabon's membership in response to last week's coup. Earlier on Monday, the coup leader, General Brice Oligui Nguema, was sworn in as transitional president. He seized power just after Ali Bongo was declared to have won a third term as president. He's not given a time frame for returning the country to civilian rule. As leaders from Central Africa sat around the table and decided to suspend Gabon because of the coup, there may have been a few moments of self-reflection. Hosting the meeting was Theodoro Obiang Nguema Masogo, who said neighboring Gabon was a threat to peace, security, and stability in the region. The president of Equatorial Guinea is now 81 and has been in power since 1979. His family, like that of Ali Bongo in Gabon, has been accused of large-scale looting of state resources and severe oppression of the opposition.
Two former executives at the Swedish oil company go on trials in Stockholm on Tuesday, accused of complicity in war crimes committed by Sudan's regime between 1999 and 2003. Sweden Lan Lonin and Swedish national Alex Shantera were accused of asking Sudan's government to make its military responsible for security at the site of one of Loanin oil's explosion field, which later led to serial bombings, killing of civilians, and burning of entire villages, according to the prosecution. Lodin was chief executive of family's firm Lodin Oil, now known as Oron Energy, from 1998 to 2002. The Shanintra was vice president at the time. The trial is said to be at the biggest in Swedish history, following a 13-year-old probe, a more than 80,000-page investigation report, and with a close argument scheduled for February 2026. The two, who were formally named as suspects in 2016, faced the formal charge of complicity in grave war crimes committed during the rule of Amr al-Bashir after Lodin Oil stock oil in 1999 in the Black 5A field in what is now South Sudan. The Sudanese military, together with an allies military, led offensive military operation to take control of the area and create the necessary preconditions for Lodin's oil exploration. Sweden's prosecution service said in a 2021 statement announcing the charges.
Sweden on Monday, September 4th, urged Iran to free one of its nationals it says has been held in the country arbitrarily since April 2022 in a case of exacerbating bilateral tensions. A Swedish citizen, a man in his 30s, was detained in Iran in April 2022. The Ministry for Foreign Affairs and the Embassy of Sweden in Tehran was working very intensively on the case and are maintaining close contact with the EU, Sweden's foreign ministry told newsmen in an email. The Swedish citizen has been arbitrarily deprived of his freedom and should therefore be released immediately. The ministry added it was in daily contact with the detained man's family. The New York Times named the man as Johan Floders, a 33-year-old who works for the EU's diplomatic service. He was arrested on April 17th last year as he returned to Tehran following a holiday. Neither the Swedish authorities nor the European Union have confirmed the detainee's identity. Iran announced in July last year it had arrested a man on suspicion of espionage. We are aware and have been following very closely the case of a Swedish national detained in Iran, a European Commission spokesman said. We are in very close touch with the Swedish authorities who have the consular responsibility, the spokesman added.
A part of China's Great Wall has been severely damaged by construction workers in central Jiangxi province who used an excavator to dig through it. Police say two people are suspected of trying to create a shortcut for their construction workers. The two have been detained on the cases under further investigation. The 38-year-old man and the 55-year-old woman were walking near the affected area, the 32nd Great Wall. They dug a big gap by widening an existing cavity of the Great Wall so that the excavator could pass through it. Police says they wanted to reduce the distance they had to travel. It also stresses that the two have accused irreversible damage to the integrity of the mine Great Wall and to the safety of the cultural rallies located in Boyong County. the 32nd Great Wall in a section of the Mine Grace Wall and in the category as a historical and cultural site, which is protected at a provincial level. Officials were alerted to the damage on the 24th August after receiving a report that there was a huge gap in the wall. The Great Wall, and a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987, was built and rebuilt on the continual basis from the around 220 BC until the Ming Dynasty in the 600s.
Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes and vehicles were swept away in floods as storms from now-weakened Typhoon Haikui made landfalls in China's southeastern Fujian province early on Tuesday after battering Taiwan for the past 2 days. About 114,400 people were moved from risky areas as the typhoon rolled in with a maximum wind speed of 20 meters per second. Several areas in Fujian recorded more than 300 millimeters of rainfall in just over 24 hours. In Fuzhou City, 2 firefighters were missing after a fire truck carrying 9 rescue workers was swept away by floodwaters during a mission, state media reported. Furniture was seen bubbling up and down in the floodwaters. Vehicles were swept away in the current and some cars stranded in waterlogged areas were completely submerged, social media posts showed. Schools in Fuzhou City as well as in Xiamen, Guangzhou and Putian were also shut. Many flights were cancelled at 2 airports in Fuzhou and Guangzhou. Tourist spots and parks were shut and ports, coastal and rivers transportation was suspended, state media reported.
Japan has told the World Trade Organization that China's ban on Japanese seafood after the release of the treated water from the Fukushima nuclear plant was totally unacceptable, the Japanese foreign minister said late on Monday. In a counter-agreement to China's August 31st notification to the WTO on its measures to suspend Japanese aquatic import, which started last month, Japan said it will explain its position in a relevant WTO committee and urged China to immediately repel the action. Some Japanese officials have signaled the countries may file a WTO complaint, which the U.S. ambassador to Japan said last week the United States could support. Japan will explain the safety of the released water at diplomatic forum, including the ASEAN summit in Indonesia and G20 summit in India this month. Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokoshu Katorino told reporters on Tuesday nothing is decided about the Japan's China leaders meeting, added. Mostuno Koyo told government spokesperson. Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and China's Prime Lin Yong will attend the ASEAN and G20 summit, while China's President Xi Jinping is skipping both conferences.
Japanese man reportedly angry that his ideas has been stolen admitted Tuesday to starting a fire that killed 36 people in an animation studio in 2019, local media said. The blaze that ripped through the studios of Kyoto Animation in July 2019 shocked the anime industry and its fans in Japan and around the world. It's correct to have done what is in the charges, Shinji Aoba said at the Kyoto District Court, according to the Jiji Press News Agency. I didn't think so many people would die, and now I think I went too far, said a 45-year-old who appeared in a wheelchair. Aoba's lawyers, however, pleaded not guilty, citing mental incompetence, the report said. Aoba, who nearly died from burns he himself sustained, faces 5 charges, including murder, attempted murder, and arson, according to local prosecutors. He is accused of breaking into the studio's building, spreading gasoline around the ground floor, and setting it alight before reportedly shouting, "Drop dead."
Indonesia won on Tuesday against Southeast Asia's bloc, getting dogged into big power rivals as leaders gather for a summit seeking to dispel worries about rivals over peace effort in Myanmar and to reaffirm the relevance of their desperate group. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo opened a summit of the 10 members association of the Southeastern Asian nations, called on the group to devise a long-term tactic strategy that is relevant and meets people's expectation. ASEAN has agreed not to proxy to any powers, not turn our ship into an area for rivalry that is destructive. Joko Widodo, as the president is known, said, "We as leaders have to ensure that this ship keeps moving and sailing, and we must become a captain to achieve peace, stability, and prosperity together." Found at the height of the Cold War in the 1960s to oppose the spread of communism, the politically devised grouping priorities, units, and non-interferences in member internal affairs. But critics say that they had limited the scope for action when it comes to handling issues like following members Myanmar, where violence raged 2 years after the military seized power in the 2021 coup.
The United States has information that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expects to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Russia over arms negotiations discussions, a White House spokesperson said. National Security Council spokesperson Adrian Watson did not confirm a New York Times report published on Monday that the two leaders plan to meet in Russia next week, but when asked about the trip, she said in a statement to ABC News that arms talks between Russia and North Korea are actively advancing. "We have information that Kim Jong-un expects these discussions to continue to include leader-level diplomatic engagements in Russia," Watson said. In part due to the success of U.S. sanctions and export controls, Russia has been forced to turn to rogue regimes like the DPRK to try to obtain weapons and equipment to support its military operations against Ukraine, the spokesperson said in a statement to ABC News, using the acronym for North Korea's official name.
The makers of the weight loss drugs Bergoni has become Europe's most valuable firm, dethroning the French luxury conglomerate. Share one rose after the Danish pharmaceutical giant Novo Nordisk launched their popular drugs in the UK. At the close of trading on Monday, the firm has a stock market valuation of $428 billion US dollar. The drug is now available on the National Health Service in the UK and also on the private market. Vergoin is an obesity treatment that is taken once a week, which tricks people into thinking that they are already full, so they end up eating less and losing weight. Famous personalities such as Elon Musk are among the reported users of the drugs, which has captivated Hollywood and the public more widely since it was approved by its regulators in the US in 2021. Vergoni and Zimpozik, a diabetes treatment with similar effect, has been described as miracle drugs. But experts warn the jab are not a quick fix nor a substitute for the healthy diet and exercise. In trials, using often put weight back on after stopping treatment.
Thousands of people protested Monday outside the government headquarters in North Macedonia's capital, Skopje, over allegations that patients at a state cancer hospital missed the life-saving treatments because staff were stealing the expensive drugs to sell on the black markets, chanting murderers. Demonstrators demanded the resignation of the country's health minister and the hospital management. Among the protesters were several people who said their relatives had died after being given placebos instead of proper chemotherapy because the drugs had been stolen. My mother had breast cancer and her condition worsened a week after she was admitted to the clinic, one young man told the crowd. Unfortunately, she didn't survive. The man, who didn't give his name, described the hospital's alleged behavior monstrous. The government and hospital officials have sought to assure the public that cancer patients are not at risk, while prosecutors have launched an investigation into the claims. Prime Minister Dmytro Kovashevsky said Monday that he understands the anger and indignation of the people, but added that the entire state health system should not be blamed.
At least 3 people died and 3 were missing as record rainfall causes heavy flooding in central Spain. Shutting roads, subway line and high-speed train connections, authorities said on Monday. Helicopters were sent to rescue people who had sought refuge on the roof of their homes in the Teldo area, some 55 kilometers southeast of Madrid. Emergency service said the sudden downpour on Sunday and early Monday transformed streets into rivers of mud that swept away cars and trash bin in Madrid. Castilla in La Mancha, Catalonia and Valencia region also fell in many areas. The 3 people died in the countryside around the central city of Teldo, where the weather service AMATs registered record rainfall of 90 liters per square meters on Sunday. One of the victims was a young man who was trapped in a lift that filled up with water, while another was in a vehicle when it got flooded, police said. The third person who died was a 50-year-old man who had been reportedly as missing. This body was found in the afternoon floating in the river near the home in the town of Camarena. It just kept rising and we are a little scared, but we were indoors. We are also safe, said Isabella Stewart, a U.S. missionary living in Teldo, as she was taking a bus.
A new photo appearing to show Russian General Sergei Surovikin, who has not been seen in public since a brief mutiny by the Wagner mercenary group in June, was published on social media on Monday by a well-known Russian media personality. General Sergei Surovikin is out, alive, healthy at home with his family in Moscow. Photo taken today, Ksenia Sobchak wrote in a caption to the picture on Telegram. Reuters could not verify the authenticity of the photo, which showed a man in sunglasses and a cap walking alongside a woman resembling Surovikin's wife, Anna. A second report published by prominent independent Russian journalist Alexei Venediktov on his Telegram channel said General Surovikin is at home with his family. He is on leave and available to the Defense Ministry. Venediktov provided no pictorial evidence. Various media outlets reported that Surovikin had fallen out of favor with the Kremlin following the aborted mutiny by Wagner in June, and that he was being investigated for possible complicity. State news agency RIA said last month he had been removed as head of the Air Force, and his deputy, Viktor Avzalov, has assumed the job on a temporary basis.
Britain Education Minister Gillian Keegan apologizes for an explosive writing outburst on Monday after complaining she wasn't being thanked enough for doing such job in dealing with potentially hundreds of unsafe school buildings. The revelations of the old and the weak concrete in school, we saw 104 other to short buildings only days before the start of a new team, and others using room propped up by the steel glider, has sparked anger among parents and teachers. The issue is a new political headache for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as members of the Parliament returned on Monday following the summer recess and add to the impression of declining public infrastructure in Britain. The government is waiting response from about 115 schools that were sent surveying to identify those with reinforces or to craft a cracking concrete and a lightweight from the concrete commonly used during the 1960s or 1980s, but now considered weak and unsafe. Kagan risks inflaming the debate further is upgraded remark caught on camera following the interview with the ITV when she suggested that she has done more than others to try to resolve the issues. This is International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network. We return after this break. welcome back. This is International Tit-Bits on Atlantic Television Network, and now to the rest of our stories. On July 26, Andrew Malkinson, 57, walked out of the Court of Appeal in London a free man. He was officially cleared after 17 years behind bars for a crime, an outrageous violence rape on the outskirts of Manchester in 2003 that he did not commit it. His terrible story is one of the UK's worst miscarriage of justice, and it is highlighted serious dysfunction in the country's policy and judicial system. The judge said, "You can walk away a free man," and that's when I started shaking. My eyes welled up, but I wasn't ready to start crying. One of the first things I thought was, this means I can go away on holiday. Malkinson shared that he left the Court of Appeal to journalist Emily Dugan who has been following his case for months. "Now I have finally been exonerated. I am left outside his court without an apology, without an explanation, jobless, homeless, expected to slip back into the world with no acknowledgement of the gaping back hole that opened up in my life." Adding that a man with their souls and paper bed and a voice trembled with anger. In 2023, in the age of 37, Malkinson has a passion for travel, which he financed through a series of odd jobs. Born in Grimsby, in the northeast of England, he was visiting the UK after spending several years in Netherlands with no criminal record. He was arrested by the police too. Ukraine has alleged that Russian drone landed on the Romania territory during a series of strikes on the neighboring Ukrainian city. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba told reporters at the news conference in Kiev that Ukraine has a photograph evidence supporting its claims. However, Romania has rejected Kiev's version of events, and reporters says it cannot authenticate the image. The row came as the Russian and Turkish leader had talked. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has traveled to the Russian city of Sochi in an attempt to persuade President Vladimir Putin to revive the deal that allowed Ukraine to export grain safely through the Black Sea. Mr. Putin said deal, which Moscow abandoned in July, would not be reinstated until the West meets its demand for sanctions to be left on Russia's agricultural produce. But he did not. He said that the Russian was moving ahead with plans to supply free grain to 6 African countries and even carried out logistics free of charge. And joining me in the conversation today is an international affairs analyst, Raymond Bata. Thank you, Raymond, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's look at our story for today. Bakers of an international agreement that banned cluster ammunition has harmed and killed many more civilians than combated are striving to prevent erosion in support for the deal after what one leading human rights group called an unconscionable U.S. decision to ship with weapons for the Ukraine for its fight against Russia. Advocacy group in the Cluster Ammunition Coalition released their latest annual report on Tuesday ahead of the meeting next week of convoying for the 102 countries that has acceded to the rifled with conversation on cluster munitions, which prohibit the explosion and called for clearing areas where the later the ground, often during or after conflict. A further 12 countries have signed a convention. The United States and Russia are not among them. Mary Waham of Human Rights Watch, who has long championed the 15-year-old convention, says the coalition was extremely concerned about the U.S. move in July after the intense debate among U.S. leaders to transfer unspecified thousands of 155mm artillery delivering or cluster ammunitions around to Ukraine. I mean, cluster ammunition is something that we shouldn't even be shouldn't even be deliberated because we have about 180 nations, including the NATO members, who have bound this cluster ammunition because of the later effects of it. The use of cluster bomb has resulted in many significant civilian casualties, and it's not something that should be welcome in a country, not even to talk of a state. And but we have US being all head up to send this ammunition to Ukraine. Do you think Biden is doing the right thing by sending this cluster to Ukraine, or this is another way of bringing the Third World War? Because, I mean, Putin said a U.S. decision to send cluster ammunition to Ukraine posted unreasonable threat to Russian soldiers peacefully killing Ukraine. And Biden said it is necessary to give these cluster ammunition to Kiev because they do not have enough ammunition to fight anymore. And of course, we are trying to bring this to an end, but all of this is still coming up. What do you think is the reason behind Biden doing all of this?
Okay, cluster munitions are banned worldwide. It doesn't mean that all countries subscribe to it. United States, even Ukraine, and Russia.
It is not bound worldwide. Sorry to cut you short. Yeah. Many countries have bound it in their countries. It means that if Nigeria decides to use it today, that is our business, because if it is bound worldwide, I don't think that the US will go extra mile to do what they're doing. And remember that Russia said they do have these weapons, but they don't want to use it because they know the side effect, they know the after effect of it. So that is the situation that we are right now.
There has been evidence to show that Russia has started using cluster munitions in Ukraine. In fact, heavily, without making any report about it to the media. So the decision for US to start sending cluster munitions to Ukraine was to counter Russia's usage of the same munitions in Ukraine. And Russia, Ukraine, and US are not signatories to that general ban on use of cluster munitions. So there is no international court of justice that are going to hold them responsible for using this because they did not sign to the general ban on the usage of cluster munitions. So it is fair usage to, according to Biden, is to hasten the end of the war, because these cluster munitions sent to Ukraine are being used in the forefront of where the Russian soldiers mostly are, not where the civilians are. So it's like the lesser evil of both worlds. Russia has already been using it fully, and this is the beginning of Ukraine going into using of cluster munitions against Russian military, not Russian civilian population.
You know, looking at the kind of weapon that we're talking about here, if Russians have been using this ammunition during that intense war in Ukraine, I think, don't you think a lot of damage would have been caused more than this? Because when the first time US sent these ammunitions to Ukraine, Putin came up and said that it's not that we do not have this weapon, but we chose not to use it. But if you have decided to send it to Ukraine, then we'll let you know that we equally have it.
Yes, you know, Russia is not entirely sincere about their non-usage of cluster munitions. Okay. In fact, that is even the reason why Ukraine has asked for cluster munitions from US, because about 1,300 deaths have been recorded in Ukraine caused by cluster munitions, unexploded cluster munitions, on civilians, not even the military. So that is why Ukraine is now asking for cluster munitions, because heavy usage of cluster munitions by Russia has already been established by Ukraine. But Russia has not made any public statement to say we are using cluster munitions, and it's not expected from Russia to actually say the truth, because Russia actually runs through a dictatorial style of government, and their military are very secretive. They are not going to say the exact types of munitions and dangerous weapons that are being used on Ukraine. Ukrainians have some of their cities blotted out of the map, and most of these are done by cluster munitions. So they have fair reason to ask for help from US so that they can counter the usage of cluster munitions by Russia.
Okay, so we have a lot of personalities, dignitaries, and of course, countries that are against U.S. sending these weapons to Ukraine, and likes of Trump. Trump came up to say yes that Trump's decision, Biden's decision is not going to help the matter, rather is going to worsen the matter. So what do you think about Trump's decision? Do you think that this is going to lead to the third war, or is just going to normalize things?
The third world war is not coming anytime soon. And Trump is campaigning for his elections. Biden is his rival in the democratic system there in the United States. So it's fair usage of him to criticize Biden. But I know if he was in seat, or when he was in seat, and this same situation came up, he wouldn't have any choice but to do what Biden is doing right now. Yes, he's just saying it because, election is coming. I will do this, I wouldn't do that.
But we have other, not just Trump, we have other personalities that have come up to say, this which you want to do is not the right thing to do. So you're attaching it to, that means you're talking about, what's it called, political ambition here, that if he was in a position, he would have done the same thing. And what happened to the other countries that don't stand to gain anything during this election? But they are discouraging Biden, they are against Biden sending this to Ukraine.
War is a dirty game. Nobody wants the war to continue for as long as. And those countries that are advocating the non-usage of these cluster munitions do not actually have war in their domains. You have to be a Ukrainian to understand what's happening in Ukraine. If cluster munitions from Russia are beginning to wipe out Ukrainian villages and towns, and Ukraine needs some of this against the Russian military, and both Ukraine, Russia, and US are not signatories to the non-usage of cluster munitions, it's fair usage. War is a dirty game. The earlier it is over, the better. And that is the reason why US is sending this.
So do you support this decision that US are taking by sending this weapon to Ukraine? Do you support it?
First of all, when you declare war, you should be ready for the circumstances and the repercussions that come with war. I think Russia should be ready for war. If they declared war, they invaded a country. Anything that results from the invasion of Ukraine is fair. It's fair on Russian military, on Russian ambition in Ukraine. It's fair to do anything to chase Russia out of Ukraine.
When Prigozhin backed off from this war because of, according to him, that a lot of soldiers were dying from their side because they did not have weapon anymore, we noticed that the level of the intensity of the war piped low a little bit. So don't you think that US coming up with supplying them this weapon is awakening the war again, and this might become dangerous at this point? Because if you're talking about that Russia should get ready for war, you know that these people already, when it comes to war, they don't, they don't think twice.
You mean Russia?
Yes.
US doesn't think twice when it comes to war.
We're not talking about US, you're talking about Ukraine now.
Ukraine is trying to get into the NATO. They want to be registered into NATO. Why do they want to be registered into NATO? It's because of Russian aggression. Russia is very aggressive towards Ukraine and is not supportive of their development.
Yes, we know.
Yeah, so if they need the cluster munitions to be able to rid off the invaders from their land and establish peace, it's fair.
Well, if you're, like I said, when we talk about cluster ammunition, this is a very dangerous weapon that, all of them don't just explode at the same time. We have bomb-legs in other places, and if you're talking about it's good for US to send this to Ukraine because of Russia, remember that the reason for the war is to protect, they're trying to protect their own civilians, they're trying to protect the country. But if you send this stuff to Ukraine, what happened? It is difficult to remove this. It is expensive to remove it afterward. You might not even know where the bomb leads is. Someone can just be going to farm and then maybe you step on something before you know it causes an explosion. So the government should think twice again. The producers of these weapons should think twice again. It is not about the enemies. It is about the household. It's about the country. We are talking about the people, the traders. We are talking about the families in Ukraine. You would think that you're doing yourself good by receiving these weapons, but it might be very dangerous afterward, because this weapon is not something that, it's not like a gun that once you pull the bullet out of it, you can just leave it there. This is something that once you plant it, in the next 5 years, 6 years to come, this still have effects on people. So the government should think twice again. US should also think twice, sending this to Ukraine. What will happen afterward? That is a much we can take on today's show. Thank you so much, viewers, for joining us on today's episode. Thank you, Mr. Raymond, for staying
It's my pleasure.
with me today. Yeah. In case you miss out in any of the stories, we have platforms for you to follow. I am Immaculata Jacob Ericana. You can join us on Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1, Twitter at Atlantic TV Net, or you can watch us live on our website at atlanticnetwork.tv. And remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Thank you for watching and continue to stay connected on ATM Socials. That's where we draw the curtain for today.